I started my own business without working for anyone. I had no idea what I was doing at all. I mean, I probably changed my pricing structure and how I do things 25 times. That is the hardest part, and it's so important to be in tune with your fellow designers or design community to see what they're charging, to see how are they structuring their pricing, because you want to be competitive with everybody, but you also want to know how everybody else is succeeding, and it's an evolving process.
So we have Britany Simon. She's the lead designer, owner of Britany Simon Design House. And I'm excited for our listeners to see what you're doing because you have some of the most amazing designs, Britany, and it's just amazing. I know, just off top, not off topic, but on topic, we're at the Design 9 and like the design you had for that for Modern Luxury when you and I were both up there for Scottsdale,
Yeah.
like it was insane. Like I just look at your designs, like how does she come up with this stuff?
Gosh, honestly, that is a great example of a client really trusting the
Mm-hmm.
process and what can happen when a client really just is all in and trusts everything that you want to bring to the table, and a really great harmonious relationship between the two of us because they were super fun, adventurous. They wanted to have something that's different. I'd say our clients are definitely those that don't want what your neighbor has, and they just kept pushing us, and then we in turn pushed ourselves, and they were on board for all of it. Like there was nothing that we showed them that they were like, no, they almost pushed it to be more. So that's where the magic happens, is when you have the clients that are on board, trust it, and want to be something different. And that was exactly what that project was.
And I think you and I who are in the industry can understand the value there, right? But
Right.
there's a journey to get to that point. It doesn't just happen the first day you open Britany Simon Design to like get
Oh,
to this
sure.
layer.
Yeah.
How do you get to that point where either whether it's credibility or resume or experience where you get a client that's like, okay, Brittany, I trust you. Like, let's go wild here.
You know what? I don't know if some people may disagree with me. I don't know if it's something, however many years you're in the industry. I think it is a personality type. It's the it's the client, I think, that either trusts it full force, or you have the clients that are really type A and like to be very hands-on and kind of be in the mix and like to not let go as much. But I think it's a personality type and a client type that really lets go and knows where the magic happens. And honestly, I think it comes with having clients that are also professionals and at the top of their field. So a doctor that's the top of their field, or you know anybody that's knows that what they're good at and what they're best at focusing on, are very good about letting go with someone they've hired to handle something else. So those are our sweet spot clients, are those busy professionals that are busy running their own business, and they're like, you do you, you're the designer, like whatever you think is best. So I appreciate those people.
It's funny you say that because when you speak about the professionals that kind of understand the value, I guess, is the value proposition. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, for you, Brittany, I mean, you're speaking like, ideal client, you kind of know who that is and they're, super successful in a way that they formulate their business. And what's interesting is I look at my ideal clients, like the really good ones are the ones that are the same way where they, to them, it's very attractive to have systems and organization and
Mm-hmm.
communication and a team in place. And, and in fairness, my firm's a little bigger, I think, than most. I mean, we're 31 employees,
Yeah.
so decent size. And so what's interesting about that is like most of my clients don't expect me to be on site every day. Like they just don't, they expect me to have a team and a process and a system where there's
Sure.
someone who's accountable. And to that point, most of my clients, like you, I'm sure similar for you, Brittany, is that they've built successful companies. They have people, they're not answering the phone for every single
Right.
thing. And so they're expecting that same level of professionality and, organization that you possess. And then when you find someone like that sees that, then I'm sure it's like, okay, Brittany, let's go have some fun.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have type A clients because I'm very type A, and we have systems and processes, and we're very, very organized. And I think that's just the way I like to run it. So we seem to attract those same people, but they're the ones that are type A, but happy to not be designers, or happy to not work the construction, or happy to not project manage anything. So yeah, those are ideal clients, and those are the projects that are the most fun, and those are the ones that turn out the best when they trust the process.
Now this design, I mean, I'm going to have to probably when I do this post, rarely do I do like the post of the content, but I think
Sure.
when yours goes live, I think I need to get some of these photos and post it just so everyone can
Oh
see it.
yeah,
It's
of that
awesome.
bathroom.
So how did, to get to that point, of course they trust you and say, okay, Brittany, did they have inspiration? Did they just say, I mean, at some point there has to be some connection of, where you're going to be going to what the final result is.
Oh yeah, I mean, we definitely take our clients' personalities in there once to heart, and we really play off of those. So this client, their house was wild to begin with, but like it was wild 20 years ago and it was mixed with Tuscan. So we knew we had to make it wild and still very impactful and interesting, but in a more contemporary way. They were sort of a rare breed because they were not worried about resale. They were not worried about getting sick of anything. They're like, if we get sick of something, we'll just change it, which is not
Mhm.
typically how we like to operate. We still like to push people into picking something classic that they won't want to feel like they got to tear out in 10 years. But they were wanting to feel like they were in a really high end luxury hotel. They wanted to wait. They said specifically they wanted to wake up and go into their bathroom and feel like they were in a Vegas hotel, like in the penthouse somewhere.
Yeah.
And that really gave us a lot of room to play with. And they love color. The house was full of color already. So again, we had a lot of room to play. And I think I had actually done a more tuned down design for the bathroom, and they were like, "No, we want more." And so we just said, "Okay, if you're asking for it, we'll give it to you." So it just was one of those really fun projects. And I think I found the stone first, and that was a really amazing quartzite, and it was pink and maroon and had all these amazing colors in it, and they were all on board. And so that's where it just sort of it went from there. It was awesome. It was a great bathroom. It's not for everybody, but it was fun.
Well, I think what's unique about your style, Brittany, I mean, we've known each other for a long time now, and you have such like a diverse portfolio. And the reason I bring that up is because we had some clients that were bringing you in that ended up not building. When this is back at the Chateau in Central, if you remember there, this is like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like 6 years ago, and she
Yeah,
was
that was a
like,
while ago.
yeah, it was I think 2018, 2017, somewhere in there. And even then, like the style that you were shown at that time was ahead of its time, if you will. And then very different than the one we're speaking about now. But
Sure.
it was just a very diverse portfolio. I mean, of course, you have a ton of experience. You've been doing this for 18 years. I mean, how have you been able to be so creative, between the different themes and styles and aesthetics, whether it's, something you're driving or the client's driving?
Gosh, honestly, to me, I think it's great if someone has a niche, and they say niche is rich, and there's some truth to that, but for me, like, niche is boring. I want to do something different. We pride ourselves on not using anything twice. Like, I know there's some designers that'll use the same light fixture twice, or if we have a client that's like, I love that other fixture you did in so and so house, we'll be like, okay, that's great, but let's look at something different, because we want to be different. We want every project to be unique, and every client is unique. Everybody's different, and everybody's personality is different. So we enjoy the the range. I don't love to do the same thing over and over again, or I just get bored, to be honest. So I love really the psychology of the design too, and really kind of diving into somebody's wants and needs. And nobody's one design style. Everybody's a hodgepodge of four or five, and kind of figuring out what makes people tick. What does their closet look like? What clothes do they like to wear? What colors do they wear? What patterns do they wear? And really pulling from that. I think our designs are very fashion driven too, which I think some of our color palettes and things that we do sort of ahead of its time, a lot of it is derived from fashion, and we're kind of feeling the colors before you see them in home. I think fashion is like 2 years, 3 years ahead sometimes of what you're seeing on interior. So we take a lot of that as a driver, and kind of see what we're drawn to from there. Sometimes I'll just take a color palette from a really great runway show, and that will be transpired into a room. It just They have a little more fun on the runway, so we like to pull from that a little bit. But then we like the neutral projects too, so we like the challenge of that. But I don't know, I just think everybody's so different, so why be the same? I mean, I wouldn't want my house to look like my neighbor's house, so I kind of take that same mentality within our clients and assume they don't want anything that looks like anything anybody else is doing.
Well, that's a separator. It's interesting because there's some designers in town and some, where you can very clearly know from house to
Yeah,
house, right, that they touched it. And Right, wrong, and different. Some clients, may be like, hey, I want this exact replica. But for the most part,
Sure.
design is a luxury service, right? People are looking for something that's unique, a one-off, and
Mhm.
something that fits their personality, as you mentioned. And so, I've had a lot of designers speak to, like, and architects for that matter, speak to, hey, travel. Travel's given them a ton of inspiration, staying at different
Yeah.
hotels and being in different countries. And I don't, I can't think of anyone recently that's talked about like fashion show like you, Brittany. We were like, hey, I'm looking at fashion and seeing where that's going because that's going to influence our design. And so I think it's very creative to mix, from your travel to your fashion and how that impacts what you're doing day to day.
I mean, it's all connected. I mean, we really like the colors specifically. You'll see colors that are really up and coming on the runway. You'll see those. That'll be the color of the interior. You'll go to Market and at High Point 2 years later, and that's what the color is everywhere. I mean, they're very connected. It's just we're a little behind on the interior side. But I've also just always been that person that, they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And I've always
Yeah.
said, bullshit, I don't want somebody to copy me. I don't want somebody to have that. Like I used to stitch things on my jeans and like stitch patterns and do different things to my clothes so that they didn't look like anybody else's things. And that's kind of the same thing I continue to do is just being different and just doing something more exciting and a little more fun.
Have you always had like I don't want to say eclectic, but unique, one off? Like there has to be a lot of creativity, that's like natural to you. It's not something that can be taught, right? I mean, some people
Yeah.
just have that talent. I mean, where did that derive?
Oh, I don't know. I think for a while, I did think I was going to get into fashion design. That's always been something that's been exciting to me. But I like to paint. I just like to be creative and work with my hands on a lot of different things. I used to like to do pottery when I was younger. I don't know. I just always want to be creating something new and different. And so this field is just kind of the perfect place for that creativity because we get to design our own furniture. We get to design a new house every single project we work on. It gets to be something completely different, and so it's so satisfying on so many levels. But I don't know. I've always just kind of been a creative person, I guess, and wanting to do something different and not follow the norm of things.
I love
I
that.
don't.
And you used the interesting word. You said you love the psychology of design. And I thought that's
Yeah,
kind of interesting. And the only reason I bring that up is because there is a little bit of, you know, psychology as you're maneuvering a couple right through
yeah,
decision process and the marriage process. It can be pretty stressful. And then you're dealing with the builder who ideally is executing your vision. And you have an architect that hopefully is
yeah,
no ego that's like, okay, Brittany, let's collaborate on this. And so as a designer, you're kind of in this world where you're trying to manage, these different parties and emotions and expectations and then still trying to understand, okay, I need to take your, understanding of what you want in your mind and now put this on paper and get this to, something that's buildable.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure you experience this. You have to sort of be a psychologist, a therapist, all the things to your client. I mean, you deal with there's a lot of feelings when it comes to building someone's home. I mean, it's very personal. It's a very personal experience. It's likely the biggest investment they've ever made. And then sometimes they don't know how to vocalize what it is that they want, right? If they could, they would be probably designing it themselves. So you have to figure out a way to kind of pry that out of them with visuals and putting words to things and figuring out who they are as a person. I think as designers, we get really good at figuring someone out really quickly. And sometimes we have to figure them out within 15 minutes, first meeting them. What style are they looking for? Is it a good fit? What is this personality like? All of that. So we do like to really get to know people and figure out what makes them tick, what they love, so that we can cater and curate everything in that house to fit them. Every book on the shelf is something that they would want to open and read. It's not just there because it's pretty. I mean, thinking about all of those things. But I mean, I'm sure you get to know your clients very well. I mean, we know what's in their nightstand drawers. We know how many pillows they sleep
Yeah.
with. I mean, we know probably more than their really good friends do about them.
Yeah. Maybe sleeping
You
arrangements,
know,
right? It's like, it's
sleeping
maybe.
arrangements. Are there two bedrooms? I don't know. You know
Does
a
the
lot of
husband
things.
snore? And yeah, do we have a pull-out bed
Yeah.
somewhere? Which is,
Do we
yeah.
need the sleep apnea machine? And do we need a space for that? I mean, we know a lot of things about people. What kind of
Yeah.
toothbrush they use.
It is definitely very intimate, as you get into that
It
level.
is.
And is very personal for sure. As you mentioned, what's interesting, how have you found success in just managing that communication and relationship to have a good one with your clients? Because in fairness, I mean, you're doing some pretty complex projects, Brittany. So it's not like these are 8-month deals. I mean, you're
Yeah.
probably 1 or 2 years in design, then 1 or 2 years in the build. And so these could be 2 to 4 year relationships with your clients or longer.
Gosh, I think what we're really good at is being very straightforward, very transparent, and again, very organized. So very early in the project, we talk about budget. There's a very clear budget. Again, it's also one of those things that not everybody knows what that budget is. So it's our job to really put to paper what that budget looks like and dissect it for them. And within that, I think there's a lot of trust built because it's really important for us to be on budget and take their money seriously because it's a big investment for them. And we can do a lot with very little. I think it's something we're very good at. So as long as we're all very clear about what that budget is and we're great within living in those parameters. But I think it's just the communication that continues through the process. Every month, the clients get an update. If they have furniture that's been ordered and we're waiting for it, at the beginning of every month, there's an update of everything that's arrived, when it's coming, when your anticipated install date is, when we need some information by. It's a very organized system, which I think it has to be when you're juggling a lot of projects and people want to know what's going on, even if it's a month at a time. And, say you're waiting 8 months for something, at least they know kind of what's happening. So it's communication is key on all of it.
Now the budget one's always a little tricky because, again, I mean, you have very savvy, right, Brittany? You've done so many projects, and so you have a good
Yeah,
pulse on what things cost. I mean, you're involved, even though you're not pricing day to day, you're not estimating these jobs. I mean, as far as the
sure.
construction aspect, but material pricing and the furnishings and a lot of elements to play in. How are you coordinating those budget conversations with your builder, with the client, to at least get to some level ground where you can at least move forward to the next phase?
I mean, I think it plays a big part in it to have a contractor that's very organized and also puts a specific bid together and puts estimates together with, uh, I know some don't like to do it, but put allowances together so that we have a parameter. You'd be surprised how many don't. But we make sure that we have that conversation. I mean, we've sat with builders before and we're like, hey, this isn't a sufficient number based on what we've talked to with the design with the client and what their design intent is and all the layers that they're wanting in this project. Like number needs to be X based on other projects and kind of where we know. I mean, we have pretty good communication with our contractors. We sort of know what the price point is. I know we're not bidding projects out every time, but we like to follow back up and say, hey, where did we land on per square foot on that project at the end? We like to know those things. That's something that's important to me because that's how everybody sort of discusses finishes and finish level based on the end per square foot cost. And we sort of know based on, hey, that project we finished was about 1,000 a square foot, and let's see where those numbers landed because we see the cabinetry bid because we redline those cabinetries and we kind of know.
Mm-hmm.
So we're probably more involved in some of that than we should be, but I like that part of it too. I mean, my dad was a residential developer, so I grew up sort of on that side of it too, and I like to understand the cost and like to look out for my client and say, hey, I think maybe we could do this a little differently and save if we change this material or we go a different direction here. I think it's important to kind of have everybody on the same page when it comes to that.
It's really smart to not only, have a pulse during construction, as you mentioned, with some of the vendors that I'm sure you have a relationship with, as well as the builder to say, where did this end up? Because that gives you a good pulse when the client comes in and says, hey, I want to design similar. Now you're going to make it unique, but at least it gives you a range so that how to set that expectation moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've had it. Maybe you could build for 500 a square foot before COVID,
Right.
you could, but now there's no way, like it just doesn't happen unless you are building a really simple project somewhere. It just, but people come in and they still ask and they still say, hey, I'm trying to be at 500 a square foot. And I can easily be like, not unless we're, paring this down and being very simple about it and very strategic. And I think we should, as designers, know that kind of information so that we can help guide them.
Yeah, it's funny how that's changed. We work with a lot of the same architects too, and
Mm-hmm.
they've even said they're like, we had an idea of what things cost, and then all of a sudden it's like we're way way
way
off.
over. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like everything went up, even furniture. I mean, everything went up 30 to 40% almost
Right.
overnight, it feels
Right.
like. And so everything had to kind of shift. Our budgets had to shift from a furniture standpoint, all of it. It's kind of crazy. It's wild how that happens.
Uh, Based on your expertise, Brittany, as an interior designer, how important, are those relationships with subcontractors, suppliers, even if they're maybe not, you're not contracting them, maybe the builder is, how valuable of a resource are they to you on every project?
Gosh, I mean, a, a good vendor goes so far. I mean, as you know, we don't have time to call call people and try to hound somebody down or send an email, send a text, and hope for somebody to get back to us. Like we like to only work with those trades and those vendors that call us back right away or get us information that we need immediately so that we can trust to keep the project moving. Same with the contractors. Like we we love to work with contractors. I mean, nothing goes well on a project. Nothing goes perfectly. There's always a problem. There's always something. It's just how we all handle it, right? Like who shows up and actually shows up when something goes wrong and who jumps in on trying to solve it with you. I think those are the key people. So those are the vendors that we love that'll, come to bat for us if we need it and get back to us quickly. And the contractors we like to work with that just we can rely on a great project and a final good product because we know that they're going to do whatever it takes to make it right.
Do you ever get involved, with bid analysis or verification with some of your GCs to make sure things are lining up, that what they're bidding is actually going to match your design?
Oh, we should do that more. And I actually think this would be a question for you is like,
Yeah.
how do we all work better? How do we all get on the same page, right? Like there's the numbers that you kind of put together to win the client, right? And kind of you do some initial bidding, but that's typically before designers really
Hmm.
brought in. And then
Hmm.
we come in and we have a different angle on it and we get a little more in depth on what that design looks like on the inside. Like, how do we all get on the same page more clearly? Because people are following their budget a little bit more strict because the prices have gone up so much.
It's a really good question. It's, I've had different experiences with all different designers that we've worked with, and they all operate a little bit differently. I think initially there has to be, to your point, Brittany, some coordination in that pre-con where it's very early, even before you start design, that we're okay, we're taking a floor plan and we're taking an elevation. We're at least putting budgets and allowances so the client has an end goal. And then that way you have proper allowances to start going making selections and try the best to stay within those parameters. And then, and that I think is pretty common, right, for the projects that you and I are working on. But then it gets a little tricky, from that point. Some designers are very good about, hey, Brad, what vendor do you plan on using for windows? Who do you plan on using for cabinetry? Who do you plan on using for tile? Because then the designer has a little bit more, I don't want to say pull, but a little bit more grasp and understanding of what is this apples for apples? Can this vendor really perform to the level that I'm hoping they are? Can they also hit the budget, which is important to you and the client? And so, some designers will get pretty involved, especially, when you bring up cabinetry and countertops and tile. There's a couple touch points that the designer is going to be very hands-on, right, when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, we usually follow the contractor's lead when it comes to your preferred vendors,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, you guys are the ones that are ordering with them, or you're dealing with those subs and those flooring vendors and cabinetry companies. It's taking our designs, yes, but you guys are the ones that have to have a great relationship with whoever you're working with. So we usually take the lead on that from the contractor. We aren't like we have to use this cabinet company and this is all that we use, but that does help to know kind of where we need to be sourcing so that we have a little more control over pricing within our process.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because as you get to the bid stage, I think I've only worked with one designer that's been like, Brad, I want to see all the bids and go through them.
Hmm.
Which I will say, I mean, the only compliment I guess I could say is that, we have a pretty robust estimating team. I have 3 estimators in there and they do a really good job, like putting together scope and bid abstracting and everything to make sure it's covered. And so the designer had mentioned, they're like, Brad, we typically with every contractor have to like vet, every bid to make sure it's right and it has everything and is it matching our design book. And they're like, this is the only time like your bid abstracts were on point. And so I know there is a trust factor as well from your side to make sure is stuff being cut out, because I know from your side, Brittany, you're trying to be an advocate to protect the client as well. So, and some builders are all over the place when it comes to estimating and how accurate they are.
Well, I mean, so for obviously for us, the worst case scenario is that the project has gone so awry or the budget has gone so bad that they don't have money left for furniture, which happens
Yes, right.
way more times than I would like it to. And every time I'm thinking, could we have how
Prevented
could we
that.
have avoided this,
Yeah.
right? How do we, how do we do that? A couple of the projects crazy, but they've forgotten the bid for countertops. Like, and had I asked specifically to review that bid, I would have caught that and been like, hey, where are these countertops? Which is a $300,000 oopsie, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But every time, I mean, I am one that likes to, at the end of every project, think about how I could have done it differently. How could we have done it better? And I'm always wanting to learn a new process and whatever is the better way to do it so that everybody wins at the end. Because there's nothing worse for me for a client to have a beautifully finished home, but it's empty inside. Or we only did one or two rooms and then they've got this museum that's empty for the next couple of years because they need to go back to work. So I'm always curious, like, what are the ways to combat that? And I'm sure the finger's pointed at you most of the time if that ever happens. It's like, well, the contractor was over budget. But, it's not always the case. Sometimes you just get there and that's what happens. But I don't know. I'm always wondering the better way to go about staying on budget. And do you do budget check-ins with clients? Like, how do you because there's always, well, we can add that. Well, yes, they can't say yes to everything or you're over budget. So I don't know, how do you guys handle that? Do you have quarterly check-ins to see where they are on budget versus the bid?
It's a really good question. I mean, this is something that, especially since COVID, has impacted us, just like you, Brittany. I mean, you think about pricing and how that's escalated. And so, really, I would say the last 24 months is now what we do when we're doing a bid presentation. This is probably where we're a little bit more adamant at pre-con to make sure that everything's selected. And so then that way, like you, Brittany, you have everything designed, everything's completed so that when we're pricing that house, we don't have any question marks.
Hmm.
There may be one small one like cabinet hardware or drapery or wallpaper or something. I mean, who knows? Maybe we're sticking
Sure.
allowance. But for the most part, we have hard numbers that we can bid. And so our goal is when we sit down in front of the client, we always come in with two proposals. And because we're open book cost plus, it's pretty easy to be very transparent. So we come in and say,
Yeah.
okay, Brittany, if we're going to build your house, here's the price all in, everything you wanted, the total wish list, the full design book and architectural plans and all the landscape and pool options, everything. You're going to be at X, right? Let's say you're at 6 million. And in preparation for that, we kind of do our own value engineering. So we go through and say, do they have to have this upgrade? Do they have to have this one? We kind of preemptively will look at certain things and say, now we're not changing the design. We're not changing things. We're just, a lot of these conversations are had with our design team anyways, just saying, hey, we picked a tile for launch at 150. If this is a sticking point, can we do like a $30 square foot item, right? And so we've done some homework so we can come in and say, on the high side, you're at 6 million. However, we've found some low hanging fruit. Here's some changes, which doesn't really change a whole house, but some areas that maybe aren't as important to you. And you could be at 5.3. And we really see a range like that big. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I bet.
it could be 10, 15, 20%, right? And so then when we're coming in, we have a high and a low. And in that meeting, we have all our bid abstracts and we sit through this like 2-hour meeting with the client and we kind of go line by line, like, is this important? Is this important? And then they may end up at like 5.7. Then the goal is, okay, now we go with our designer and we're with our architect, and now we're making sure that everything's, design book hasn't changed too much. We can make these edits. And then ideally for us, well, we use Build a Trend. So now we take that 5.7, we put it in Build a Trend. It's cost plus. It's there. Client can check 24/7 the budget. Like they have full access. So they don't have to say, Brad, where we at this quarter? Where we at this month? So they can go into the app and they can see what's been built to date, balance to complete. And we highlight for them what's been contracted because our goal is, 90% of that $5.7 million example is we can contract. We can contract most of these. I probably can't contract lumber or
Right.
steel or drywall because, these are things upon, cash on delivery, right? That's going to be the
Right.
current market. But I can order countertops and store them. I can order plumbing fixtures. I can order wallpaper. I mean, there's things I can order and store. And so I don't want to say it's perfect, but it's definitely today, 11 years in business, the best we've done. Like to at least from that initial concept to 5.7, I can honestly sit in front of the client and say, look, pending some crazy COVID thing, but I mean, even at
Hmm.
cost plus over the next 18 months, we're going to be within a couple percent, which then, is better for the designer because now they can plan on a furniture budget where it's just not going out of control. Now, like you
Right.
said, they're losing $300,000 furniture because they didn't have countertops in the budget.
I think that's where you're different than many, is that it's not as organized of a system. It's not as open book. Some are, and so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
them aren't. And honestly, I don't think they can be because they're not organized enough. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where sometimes the budget gets a little haywire, is that, there's so many change orders and things that happens during that process. But if they're not on top of it, it almost it costs so much more because they're not, you know, refunding that tile that you never purchased, and then
Right.
you've got to pick something else. Like, I don't think a lot of that is necessarily ever accounted for, because there's just too many changes and they can't keep up with it. But I mean, it's so important to have an open book policy like that, I think. With that much money and that many things, I feel like it almost has to be, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah, trust me, I know because I network with a lot of builders and I know you network with a lot of designers. I mean, the thing is, I've found that with the scale and volume and cost that we're dealing with, it's so much easier to just be very upfront. Like, this is how we're paid. This
Hmm.
is our profit margin. Like, it's very clear why you're hiring AFT and what we're paid. At the same time, you have the full cost, lien waivers, open book, invoices, and it's all uploaded so they can at any time check that and have everything. And it makes it easier
Right.
for the design team too, because this is where we just had so many pain points is that, we'd sit in a meeting pre cost plus lump sum, and the designers looking at like changing the beams, looking at us like, well, what's this cost? And we're just sitting there like, I don't know, and it's like, it's so frustrating because, to me, I'm like, it's just so much easier to say every discount I get, I'm going to pass on, and it makes it easier for the designer, makes it easier for the client, and then it's just a much more clean process. And
Yeah.
I think part of that too. I mean, estimating is definitely, as from a builder perspective, a builder should be spending most of their resources or time or organization at estimating and pre-con. And I think most don't, and I didn't, early on until I learned that the most crucial part of me being successful as a builder is that pre-con and planning stage. Because
Hmm.
if I have all the information and I have the right trades and I have the contracts and I have the scope and I have the pricing, now I can be successful and do the build and coordinate with our design team, right? And along those lines, we have really good coordinators, like, without calling them out by name, but again, they're amazing. Like, all my coordinators, all female to be open, they do cabinet sign offs and window sign offs and all the procurement and all the submittals and samples and even shop drawings for the structural steel. So they're like
Yeah.
working to change orders. So they're working with our designer, they're working with the client, just back and forth. And so, a lot of these things are being handled in the very beginning of the project. So then that way, our field team can operate accordingly. And so it takes time
Yeah.
though, right? Just like anyone.
I mean, your system always has to be kind of evolving, I think,
Hmm.
just as things change and you're like, well, this is working, this isn't working. But
So
yeah.
for you, Brittany, I mean, so you've been in business 18 years, like
Hmm.
super savvy, super talented. I mean, it's not like, I'm sure today you look at your business and of course you're evolving like all of us, but I'm sure today from a systems, from an organization, from pricing, like you understand what furniture is and what's going to be a square foot. You know what
Sure.
a house is going to be. How did that journey transpire from early on to now to have the
Oh
confidence and
gosh.
understanding of your business?
Honestly, that's the hardest part. I worked on the builder side when I first got into the industry. So I worked in new construction, um, where I with a bunch of different builders throughout the valley, and I just kind of worked on designing kitchens, bathrooms, and cabinetry and all of that early, and then decided this is just not fulfilling for me. I got into that side because my dad was a residential developer, so I did that. It was 2005. It was a great time. It was a great time to be alive.
It was.
And the market was great. And then I realized I just was very unfulfilled design wise. I wanted to be able to see the projects all the way through. I wanted to do the textiles and the furniture and finish the home that I had envisioned in my mind during that, construction part of the process. So I started my own business without working for anyone. I had no idea what I was doing at all. I didn't know that the way you made money was by having wholesale furniture accounts.
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you don't know that.
I didn't know that. I mean, the I learned a lot of things from one of my furniture vendors who was super helpful to me. I don't even know how I found him, but he was like one of my first accounts that I ordered for wholesale furniture. And he's like, you got to go to High Point Market, you got to do this. And from there, I mean, I've probably changed my pricing structure and how I do things 25 times
Mm-hmm.
because
Same. Yeah.
there's so many different ways to go about it. You can do hourly, you can do square footage, you can do
Per room, per project,
cost
whatever.
plus.
Yeah.
So many different ways. And honestly, it's still something that is evolving for me to make to find the most appealing way to price something for a client. But you know, now where we've kind of landed with new construction is a per square foot, and then right lately we've been trying to incentivize people to do furniture with us when we do a new construction because there's nothing worse, like we said, about doing a project for 2 3 years and then not being able to finish it to the furniture level and see it through. But we've been doing, cost per square foot. And then on the furniture side, we still do hourly a lot. If it's not a new construction, we'll still do hourly. Unless it's a full house, we'll do it per square foot. But that is the hardest part. And it's so important to be in tune with your, fellow designers or design community and everybody to see what they're charging, to see how are they structuring their pricing, because you want to be competitive with everybody, but and you also want to know how everybody else is succeeding, and an evolving process.
Now,
It's definitely interesting.
it is, and I think along those points, I think what's unique about you, Brittany, just being open is I know you have a collaboration over competition. I think it's pretty unique that you have a really good circle. I think Jenny from Black Ink and Lexi Westergaard,
Hmm.
Jamie Rose, right? Maybe I'm
Yeah.
missing someone, but I know you
No.
all are really close and you meet
Yeah.
regularly.
Honestly, it's so important. I mean, our industry is very unique, and we work very closely with contractors and architects, and we want to know from each other how was your experience? Like you built with you worked with AFT. How was working with
Yeah,
Brad? Like getting the
the skinny,
inside knowledge
right? Yeah,
of the people that you want to work with and the people maybe you don't want to work with.
right.
Um, and thinking about things to, keep an eye out for with someone. And also we share stories of the design woes and the business woes of like, here's what happened with this client and how do you suggest I deal with this? I mean, we've had a lot of texts like that before. It's like, hey, my client won't pay this bill, what do you recommend? um, but I think it's great to have a close network of people that you can bounce ideas off of each other. We can easily text each other and be like, hey, I need a sofa that's under 5,000 square feet in stock. Where do I find one? And you'll get three answers within an
Hmm.
hour. And it's so nice to be able to share that knowledge with people. I didn't have that early on. And
Hmm.
had I had that in the early stages of my business, I would have saved a lot of headache and I would have made a lot more money early on than I did when I first started. That network is so important.
Yeah, it's super important. And it's interesting because there's a lot of people I speak with, they're always like, well, I may compete against them or should I be sharing secrets? I mean, just being realistic, in Phoenix, I mean, how often are you competing against, that circle?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I just lost a project to Jamie Rose the other day. But I mean, but it's a personality fit, right?
Right, right.
You have to, they had seen one of her projects and they loved it because it was on the market. And so they walked her home that she had done and they fell in
Hmm.
love with it. And it's like, they wanted to create the same house again. It's like, I get it. I
Hmm.
would have called her too. Um, but to me, I'm always one of those that it works out the way it's supposed to work out. So the clients that jive with you and they want to work with you, those are your people. If it's somebody
Hmm.
that they fit better with somebody else personality wise, then those are their people. And there's enough work to go around. Really, it's a big city. And there's a lot of projects, so I always look at it as it works out the way it's supposed to work out. And
It's,
I
it's
and I also never regret saying no is another thing. If you've ever said no to how many times have you said no to somebody and regretted it? Never,
never, never.
never.
Yeah.
So I'll never regret saying no and be like, you know what, I think I'm gonna pass. I've never been like, oh, I should have taken it.
Yeah. You're usually cutting out, usually there's a red flag that leads to that, and there's a reason
Yep,
why you said no.
exactly. exactly.
Yeah, life's too short for some of those. But I don't want to say it's mature. I just think it's very savvy in the sense that I was just speaking to a builder in California about this yesterday, and we aligned just like you, Brittany, in the sense that he and I were speaking about this same topic, and he was mentioning how he was going head to head with one of his really good friends. It's another builder, and it
Hmm.
was the exact same conversation. He said, at the end of the day, we care about the clients, we care about the industry, and we want to make sure that if I'm losing to Brittany Simon, I know she's doing an amazing job, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And so much of this is relationships. So much of it is client fit, client personality.
Hmm.
And as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, I mean, some of these relationships are multiple years, and so that's why client fit is so important, and it's okay to lose to a good friend that is going to take care of the client and do a great job at the
100%. I mean, you're like dating your clients for 3 years.
end.
It's like, so you wouldn't go, date somebody for 3 years unless you really liked them and you felt like it was a really good fit. So it kind of works the same way. I mean, you're not going to be for everybody and everybody's not going to be for you. But yeah, I'd much rather lose out on a project to somebody I know that's going to do an amazing job. Like when they said, "Oh, we're going to work with Jamie," I'm like, "Great, the house is going to be beautiful. I'm sure it's going to be amazing." I'm bummed, but I totally understand. And like, tell Jamie I said hi. But yeah, again, I'm with you where it's collaboration over competition. There's enough work for everybody.
So what resource did you have? I mean, before the collaboration aspect, where now you're essentially accelerating, expediting that growth chart. Up to
Hmm.
that point, just trial and error, figuring it out, losing money, making mistakes. I mean, did you have any resources to like understand how to really structure your business?
Honestly, a lot of it was just trial and error for what I felt like uh, worked for me. So figuring out what that markup was on the furniture and figuring out what my hourly was early on, and then just kind of asking different people in the industry, like contractors or whoever that I had developed a relationship with, or even vendors. And I'm like, hey, so and so, what do they charge a square foot? What do they charge an hour? And they'll share. I mean, most people will share things with you. Um, so I did that and just found what worked best for me. I found very quickly that I had undervalued myself when I started to listen to more podcasts. Like Luann Nagaro is a
Yeah.
great. She has amazing design um, episodes where it's a wealth of knowledge and just hearing how other people structure things and why it works for them or why it doesn't. There's so many different podcasts and things that you can listen to. It's just so much information. And so once I really started doing that, it changed things for me and kind of realized I was not charging what I should have been charging and being okay with asking for more because we are a more boutique firm and I am one that when they hire me, they work with me. It's not that I have a
Hmm.
huge team of
Hmm.
10. It's me and I'm the face that they will see at every single design meeting.
Which
And
is unique.
which is unique, but I have control issues and I want to be there. And so the way I look at it is if someone's hiring my firm, it has my name on the door, it should be me. And
Hmm.
I spent a little time on some of the slower years where instead of letting someone go, I passed on the design work to them and I oversaw it and art directed it, but I was doing a lot of the business side of it and I was miserable. So I realized I have to be able to have the business side of it and the creative side of it, or I don't want to do it.
Hmm.
So I realized then that I was never going to be a big firm and that it was going to be me that was always involved. So I have to ask for more. I have to be okay with asking for more because it is me. It's not a junior
Hmm.
designer that's taking it over and I'm just kind of pointing at it and saying, yeah, that looks good. We'll move forward. It's me in all of the meetings in my hand and all of it.
I think what's unique about that, credit to you, Brittany, is that you have to right, wrong, and different, whether you're passionate about it or not, you have to understand the financing. You have to understand, the freight and procurement. And I mean,
Hmm.
you're handling every aspect of this. And so even if your passion is the creative side and the design side, there has to be a little bit of marriage of time between these different aspects. And so
Sure.
how have you been able to, I don't want to say compartmentalize, but be able to say, okay, on my creative hat, which I'm really passionate about, but now I have to put on my business hat and look on this side because I'm really running all of it.
So it's still a juggle. but I will say I do have someone that handles procurement. So once it gets through design stage, once we're done presenting and the client's like, yes, looks good, then someone else in my office prices everything out, puts it in an invoice, sends it off, and then handles procurement. And then I get to show back up at install
Mhm.
at the end. So that does help alleviate some of it for me. I also have somebody that does all of our drawings. So all of the drawings in house with 3D renders and all of our build book stuff. But I say I probably am still at least 50% business that I have to handle on a daily. And on a good week, I'm 50% design. But I'd say it's probably more like 75-25. So, owning a business, a design business is not for the faint of heart. You still have to really enjoy the business side of it, which I do enjoy the business side of it. It just can't be all of it for me
Yeah.
because the creative part of me is like, no, I
Yeah.
need to not be in front of a computer today. I want to play with things. So the business side is, I am more of an entrepreneur. Obviously, I went to school for business and interior design, and that was so valuable to me. Uh, so it is a lot of the part of what we have to do is answering the emails, worrying about marketing, worrying about all of that stuff.
I mean, look, let's be honest. You have to have time to put patches on your jeans and create these one-offs. Like you.
Yeah, I do. I gotta have time to, I'll paint. That's why I have to paint in my free time. If I
Yeah.
didn't get enough time to design that week, like I'm gonna be painting something that weekend.
Doing some pottery again, doing it
Yeah, I'm
all.
gonna throw some pottery.
So what's unique, and of course, I mean, anyone listening can tell like how comfortable you are in front of the camera and speaking, and like very on point. And you've had a background, you've done some TV too, and so maybe speak to that. The TV experience you had. How did that either impact the brand or just like maybe the confidence for you as Britany Simon today?
Gosh, being on Design Star on HGTV, God, it was 12 years ago now, kind of crazy. Um, Definitely allowed me to cut the cut the ties with working for someone, and really allowed me to start my own business and work for myself, and gave me the confidence to do that. I had some of my best clients out of the gate from watching Design Star. I had one in a huge remodel in LA from watching or from being on that show, and that I had never done that before, and I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. And so that really was a huge pivotal moment in my career, was doing Design Star. And then the other shows weren't so much something that got me business, but it was more of things that taught me uh, to always have a plan, like ABCD, and think of being able to problem solve. It was like it trained me to problem solve and come up with better solutions, figuring out how to do more with less, um, and doing things fast. Being efficient is a huge part of TV design, and being able to knock something out. I mean, to be able to do a design in a couple of days is kind of insane. So you get really good at time management, and I would say it's more of like a crash course in design training. um, Besides it, bringing some validity to me as a designer, which it helps with that too.
And so as you look back, I mean, I know there's a commitment to that. I mean, all positive, any regrets? I mean, it sounds like there was incredible learning experience from it. So of course there's that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just grateful that I didn't have kids when I did the HGTV Design Star thing. I don't, because we were there for 6 weeks and you didn't have a phone, you didn't have, I don't think I would have been able to do it because I would have
Hmm.
needed to talk to my kids or I would have missed them so much. It was a good time in my life to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that was a huge part of it. And for me, it was a great experience. It was super fun. It was like design camp, essentially, like a
Yeah.
6 week
Boot
crash
camp.
course design camp. Yeah, it was like a boot camp. And I loved every minute of it. And I know some other people that were on it with me struggled because they had families, and that would just be hard to be that separated from life. But to me, it was great. I worked for Travel Channel, Hotel Impossible for a little bit. That was super
Hmm.
fun because it was only a week at a time. So I'd get to travel. I had my daughter when I first started that, and then got pregnant with my son while I was doing the second season. But I was only gone for a week at a time, or like 5 days at a time. So that was really fun, and got to do design and just show up into a really cool part of the country, and a place I'd probably never go back to, but it was fun to see and do that. So all of it was a really awesome experience.
Hmm.
Did it pay well? No, no, it did not. People don't do TV design for the money.
Yeah.
They do
They
it
do it
in
for the
hopes,
exposure. Yeah.
yeah, for the exposure, or to be the Joanna Gaines where you get to do, have a line one
Brand
day of
deals or line.
furniture
Yeah.
and brand
Mhm.
deals and have your own network. I mean, you do it for that. You don't do it because you're killing it while
Right.
you're
Yeah.
filming. You don't have much free time. You don't really have a life. It's just that. But at the time of my life, it was perfect. I
So when
couldn't
you're,
really do it now, but
yeah, there's no way. I mean, for 6 weeks at the
there's no
time, I
way.
mean, like, what does that schedule look like? I mean, 6 weeks,
Oh,
you're not allowed to have your phone. So, what does the
oh.
challenge look like?
So I think they've changed the rules
Hmm.
now because there are probably some complaints about it. But this was 12 years ago. What they would do is sort of you're sequestered essentially with the people that you're on the show with. You're living in a house together, all in one under one roof. You you don't have a phone. You do not have TV. You don't have books, magazines, nothing,
Nothing.
because they think, they don't want to have outside influences of any kind for design inspiration. Like they want you to just magically come up with things as you need to. So that was a crazy time. I mean, I think we got to call home once a week, and it was on a very limited time frame. So sometimes that once a week call, if you had kids and it was 9 o'clock, I mean, the kids were asleep if they were little. So they would go 2 weeks without talking to their kids, which is
Wow.
insane. Could you
Yeah.
imagine not talking to your kids for 2 weeks? That would be crazy.
It's so hard.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it would be so hard. That would mess with me. But
Hmm.
we were filming when Whitney Houston died. This was like a
Hmm.
very specific memory because that was the only time they let us turn on the TV, was to watch the news about Whitney Houston. And so that was like, what a time to be alive that day. It's like, oh my God, we can watch some TV. Otherwise, we just got to talk to each other. I mean, we'd film for 12 hours a day, so we didn't really get very many days off, but it was crazy. It was, you were you were so void of inspiration by the end
Oh, I bet.
that you'd be looking at everything. I mean, you were looking out the window, you were trying to find, you know, what could I do with, tree bark? What could I do with tree bark? Because there's a tree outside. I mean, we, you don't realize how much you get inspiration from TV and books and magazines and things until they've taken it away from you
Right.
and your freedom entirely. And all you're doing is looking at each other for 6 weeks. It's pretty crazy.
I mean, even if you have a good memory, I mean, think about it. It's like anyone that's drawn something. Like if you're trying to draw from memory, like what an animal
Uh-huh.
looks like, it's like
Yeah.
impossible. But if you can see a
Yeah.
picture, then you're like, okay. And so for you, if you don't
You
have,
Google it. You're like, I got
yeah,
to draw a cat. And then you look up
yeah,
a cat picture.
yeah.
So you have something to reference.
And if you're like, from design, and you can look through social media or look through your collections or look through previous projects you've done, if you're
Hmm.
going just blank slate trying to
Yeah.
from memory
Do you
when I
imagine
traveled
without
in France, yeah,
Pinterest?
there's no way. Yeah, there's just no
But
way.
I mean, although I think it does make you tap into like a deeper level of creativity.
Hmm.
Um, when you have less resources, this is one of the things I took away from it, is like when you have less resources, you become very good at making the most of something and tapping into like a deeper creativity part of your brain where you're like, I can work with that. So I almost like parameters now. If somebody was like, I don't have a budget, that's almost more daunting to me than giving me some parameter of
Yeah.
some kind, because I got to know where to start, right?
Yeah,
Based on
absolutely.
a parameter.
So what do you do for fun, Brittany?
Gosh, I like to travel. We like to travel, and then we do paint. So my husband and I paint in the garage. Like we paint all kinds of things. I don't like what I paint half the time because that's how artists typically roll. But uh, we like to paint when it's not hot out. I just like to do creative things. I like to put Legos together with the kids.
Fun.
The kids are pretty crafty, so I like to do things with my hands. Is what I like to do in my free time.
It's
What do
amazing.
you like to do? What do you do in your free time besides hanging out with your kids and going on Disney cruises?
We did before you came out. We're talking about that Disney cruise, and that was quite an adventure with 6 kids. We like to travel. Like I didn't growing up. I never traveled. Like it just wasn't in that place for me as a kid. our travel is just, we go camping once a year or something, that was the extent. But so I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed traveling and taking the kids and letting them explore and kind of learn different cultures and stuff. So outside of that, of course, I'm like you, obsessed with, business and company. And so that's part, but I think I'm a big sports guy. So I like golf. I still play basketball, like pretty competitively. And so just, staying active, we have to stay young, right? It's a high stress environment, Brittany.
Yeah.
So.
I bet I'm going to ask you a question that probably a lot of people want to know because you're, you're always doing something, right? Like, so you're on top of your social media. You're
Mhm.
always posting on there. You've got a bunch of kids and you're fit, you're working out, you're playing basketball. Like Brady, I'm working with Brady on a
Yeah.
project and he's like, I don't know how he does it. Does he not sleep? He's like, he has free time. Like, how does he even have free time? So you have to tell people, do you just sleep 4 hours a night? Are you one of those people? Or how do you get it all done?
No, truthfully, both my mom and dad don't sleep. They sleep 5 hours a night. Oh, that's high. And so I'm
Okay,
naturally,
so it is
it
like a
is 5 hours.
5 hour a night.
And anyone that is close
That's
to me
crazy.
knows because they'll text me at 11 o'clock and I'm responding, and then 5 a.m. I'm responding. So fortunately 5 hours. So I maximize the other
Oh
19.
my
And
gosh.
yeah, it's constant, between gym, basketball, golf, work, company, kids. Like there's a lot of moving parts, but
I think that's the key to success is the 5 hours a night.
it
Because I
is.
have to have eight.
I know.
I need eight and maybe nine. Like nine is a sweet spot for me. Not every night, but nine would be great.
Yeah.
So it's like I gotta cut at least two activities out of my day
Yeah.
based on
That's a round of golf.
that.
Where do you have 4 hour round of golf you're missing
Well, that's
right
what I
there?
mean. Brady's like, I don't know how he has time. I play basketball with him. He'll go golfing. He's like, I don't know how he does it.
So funny. It's awesome. But and then have good
Oh
people. I
man.
mean, there is part of that, really good people surrounding yourself with, that help.
Yep.
But Brittany, you've been amazing. I mean, as time flew by, as it does, you're an incredible
It
guest. And
did.
so for those listening, where can they find you?
I would say I'm most active on Instagram. So at Britany Simon, that has our most updated projects and things. Otherwise, our website's pretty updated, but I'm trying to be better at Instagram. I just need, 5 hours of sleep and I would be on top of it. I'd be much better at it if I only needed five.
That's amazing. Well, again, thank you so much for making time. I know how busy you are, Brittany, and and for everyone listening, make sure you go check out her Instagram, give her a follow. She's doing some amazing stuff. So,
Thanks, Brad.
if you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.